Welcome everyone to the 2019 Reviewer Tutorial. This is presenter tips, more specifically how to engage the audience. My name is Corey Coletta, and I am your conference committee member who will be facilitating the presentation today. If you have any additional questions after this short tutorial, please email Allison at events@caucus.ca. She is your point person for all conference logistics and communications, and we look forward to supporting you throughout the rest of the planning process. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that we are viewing this recording on traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, and we want to recognize their contributions to this place and express our gratitude for our ability to come together and learn today. A warm welcome to everyone viewing this from across Canada. We are very grateful for your support and contributions to the conference this year. This quote really solidifies what this presentation will be about. It says here that according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. This means to the average person, if you have to be at a funeral, you would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. And this is said by Jerry Seinfeld. So we're going to get into the basics of public speaking, but this really does kind of capture how most folks feel about public speaking. So we're hoping that some of these presenter tips will really help you to prepare for the presentation that you'll be doing in just a few short months. So first, we're going to start with the basics of public speaking, some do's and some don'ts. The conference committee has come up with a small acronym, WESTY, and it's really important to remember this acronym as welcome, eye contact, smile, thanks, and introduction. So you do want to welcome your audience and your participants to your presentation when you begin. You do want to take a moment to look up from your notes and actually look at the attendees. They will not feel engaged if you are not giving them your own engagement as well. You do want to smile. You do want to thank people in the audience for coming. And you do want to take a moment to introduce yourself and your topic, and of course the land in which you're presenting on. A few more do's and don'ts. For hand gestures, you do want to use your hands to state a point, but you don't want to flail excessively for no reason. Nothing is more distracting than the presenter's hands going all over the place and it's not actually accentuating any of the points in the presentation. You do want to stand up straight if you are physically capable with your head and shoulders back to use good form in your body posture and to be able to engage and make that eye contact with your audience. You don't want to slouch or turn your back to the audience, and you only want to sit if it's for health reasons. In terms of enunciation and speed, you should speak clearly, speak accurately, and speak purposefully. Don't rush through a topic or a point just because you're under a crunch time. You should always say that you could come back to that or park it for the end of the presentation. It's important when we're presenting to be transparent about our content. So do provide content warning when needed. If it's difficult, sensitive, or potentially upsetting material that can be triggering for some, it's important to give that kind of content warning at the very beginning of the presentation. Taking a brief moment to provide a content warning shows that you're respectful of individual experiences of your audience members. Discussing a sensitive topic in a brash or cavalier manner can be off-putting to some, and they may zone out just to protect themselves. It's important to also be specific. Try to do your best to use the appropriate and accurate terminology in your presentation. The unintended use of a generalization or a mischaracterization may lead to more audience disengagement. Now that we've covered some of those do's and don'ts, I'm going to get into a bit of the processing of information and the learning styles that your audience members may have. I always find this area interesting because only 10% of people self-identify as auditory learners. So standing and talking at your audience, you're only reaching 10% of them. A PowerPoint slide is a visual representation of learning, but there are other ways as well. Let's dive in. So as I said, remember there are different types of learners, so try to appeal to multiple learning styles. Firstly, we have our visual learners. They learn best by watching, so consider showing images, videos, or slides that correlate to what you're saying. I like to show data and graphs as well. We have auditory learners. Like I said, this is just 10% of learners, and they learn best by hearing. So the talking that you're doing throughout the presentation, that'll meet their needs. Then we have tactile learners. These folks learn best by feeling and touching. Consider a show and tell, bringing in objects, artifacts, and just anything really for participants to hold, pass around, engage with physically. We also have kinesthetic learners. They learn best by doing and trying. So consider activities or having participants get involved by talking to the person next to them or engaging in a conversation with you. Get them out of their seats, move part of their body. These are ways to engage these types of learners best. Then there's other learning styles, of course. You can combine any number of these techniques to help create an integrated and engaging experience for all of your learners. But please remember, just lecturing from the front of the room is only meeting 10% of the needs of the room. Finally, let's talk about some tips and tricks or some strategies for success. Firstly, there's a number of methods to encourage participant engagement, including activities, breakout groups, interactive tasks. One of those is to go digital. So use an online interactive tool like Kahoot. Kahoot lets participants log in using their smartphones and give real-time feedback in the form of surveys, trivia and quiz answers, best guesses, etc. There are some potential downsides to this type of activity. It can have the opposite of the desired effect. If you have any kind of technical difficulty, a limited cell reception, or the internet is spotty or slow, so make sure that the Wi-Fi is working. Additionally, if not every participant has access to a smartphone for financial reasons, for example, some participants may feel or be excluded. Using paper, something tangible for the participants to take away with them, is really important. Give a handout for reference. They can use it to follow along during the presentation. They can also use it to refer back to when the presentation is over. Of course, if they want to bring your content back to their institution, this is a great reference point as well. To add any additional elements, you can leave certain keywords blank for participants to fill in as they go. That'll make sure that they're paying attention throughout the presentation to make sure that they fill in the blanks appropriately. One of my favorite strategies is gamification. Use a game to encourage participation. For example, asking trivia questions coupled with that Kahoot strategy, or just trivia questions without Kahoot about the material you're presenting can really get a great interactive audience. Keep score even and give out prizes. This will really engage your audience and provide an incentive to participating. And then we have a Q&A. If you're having difficulty getting participants to answer your questions, you can try a think, pair, share. In this opportunity, participants have 30 seconds to think about their answer and then a minute to turn to the person next to them where the pair discusses their answers. After a minute, the pairs can share their answers with the group at large. Once someone has had the time to clearly express their thoughts to one person, they're more likely to feel comfortable repeating those thoughts to a group with affirmation or feedback. Speaking of feedback, that's our next section. We're going to talk about feedback and assessment strategies now. So, gathering informal or formal feedback before, during, and or after your presentation to assess the knowledge of the participants and the understanding of your content and the learning of the group is really important. Here's a few quick ways to gather feedback and assessment information. Number 1, a KWL chart. A KWL chart is a graphical organizer. The letters KWL stand for know, want to know, and what I learned. It allows the presenter to get an idea of what participants already know and lets the presenter focus more on the areas of interest of the participants. This is a great thing to do during the middle of your presentation or at the very beginning. Next, we have the muddiest point. Ask participants to jot down a quick response to one question. What was the muddiest point in the presentation? The term muddiest means most unclear or the most confusing. You can ask participants to share their feedback publicly during the presentation to allow the presenter, yourself, to address the questions, or presenters can collect the feedback and email respondents individually. 1-minute papers. Presenters give out a piece of paper with 3 questions on it. What is one thing you learned from this presentation? What is one thing you'd like to know more about? What is one question you still have? Participants have 1 minute to answer the questions on the paper. Then we have the roses and thorns. In small or large groups, participants share what they liked best about the presentation. It can be specific or just general praise. They will also come up with one piece of constructive feedback about the presentation. You can use this information to help deliver a more successful presentation in the future. Digital feedback. Finally, we encourage participants to complete online feedback forms, either emailed to them after each presentation or included in the conference app. Those are all of our strategies for tips for presenters. We hope that this has helped you to become more familiar with how to engage the audience and that you feel more confident presenting at the conference coming up in Calgary. Please stay up to date with all of the latest CACUSS news and follow us on Instagram at CACUSS Photos and on Twitter at CACUSS Tweets. And continue to follow the hashtag CACUSS19. We can't wait to see you at Mount Royal in June, and thank you for all of your time and hard work.